I think it's got a lot of people scratching their heads. Why would young people go so much, especially when Biden's victory owed so much to the under 30s? They went for Biden by 59 to 35%. And so, in other words, if it continues to swing like the opposite way to Trump, that could be decisive in the general election in November.
David Charter, Assistant US Editor at The Times, joins me as usual to talk about what's going on in American politics. Welcome to the show, David.
Greetings from Washington, D.C.
Fantastic. You're still in shock that we're still calling it the Road to 47, aren't you?
I was a little surprised because we had quite a good debate, didn't we, with one of our listeners as well.
We really dug deep into it. Let's go back to the Stormy Daniels trial. We talk about it every week. This is the point where Donald Trump is quite close to getting in the old orange jumpsuit. He's breached the gag order 10 times, and the judge has said, I'm fining you, but I'm getting quite close to putting you in prison.
Pretty strong words from the judge, Ed, actually. He's clearly at the end of his rope, and most commentators that I've read suggest that any other defendant would probably have been given some jail time by now for 10 breaches of the gag order, supposedly preventing Trump from even discussing the jury and the witnesses and relatives of people in the courtroom. But he keeps on doing it, and so the latest fine, he went off to one of the proliferation of conservative media sites called Real America's Voice. He told them the jury was picked quickly, stacked with Democrats. It's unfair. The judge hauled him back in for another hearing on it. Another $1,000 fine, but $1,000 is small change for Trump, who is back in the list of the world's top 500 wealthiest people, thanks to his social media sites' shares, which are absolutely zooming up at the moment. And so the judge said, it appears this is not acting as a deterrent. Therefore, going forward, this court will have to consider a jail sanction. The judge said he didn't want to do that. He knew what a big deal it was because he's the former president and possibly the next president.
I'm with the judge. I mean, that is a big step to see Trump in handcuffs, because they always put you in handcuffs when they put you in prison in America. I mean, it would be unbelievable.
It would be sensational, really mind-boggling.
And what prison would he go to? Kind of maximum security Rikers prison or something? I mean...
There would have to be, and this was spelled out a little bit actually in court. There would have to be a special enclave for Trump where his Secret Service detail could also be housed, because he has to be protected and overseen by enormous security wherever he goes. So it wouldn't just be him; they'd be locking up a bunch of Secret Service guys as well.
It is too kind of surreal to contemplate. But let's talk about another sort of counter-intuitive thing, which is apparently the young prefer Trump to Biden. CNN poll that you've written about in today's Times has the under 35s backing Trump 51 to 40%.
Yeah, this is the biggest finding that we've had of this. It's been trending in this direction, Ed, for months. And I think it's got a lot of people scratching their heads. Why would young people go so much, especially when Biden's victory owed so much to the under 30s? They went for Biden by 59 to 35%. And so, in other words, if it continues to swing like the opposite way to Trump, that could be decisive in the general election in November. But what's interesting to me is if you read into the social science a little bit, there's been a lot of research among Gen Z and just how much they feel left behind by the economy. Now, a lot of people talk about a lot of other things like Gaza, for example, and because they see the very visual student protests. But what's really on the minds of the whole generation is just how impossible it is in the latest situation, for example, to get a mortgage, the highest mortgage rates for 25 years. The highest student debt that's been seen for forever, really, and that's why Biden is trying to forgive so much student debt. He's forgiven $144 billion in student debt, but it's still only scratched the surface in a way. He tried to, his administration wanted to write off a lot more, but the Supreme Court brackets a conservative Supreme Court with 3 judges appointed by Trump, voted along ideological lines to block a massive forgiveness of student debt, which may have gone a long way towards resolving some of those economic worries
But there's also
for
this
the younger
trend of the
generation.
young, apparently, other polls are showing, not necessarily related to the US, that the young favour the authoritarian leader, partly because they're so fed up with the problems they face.
Well, this is more noticeable among men rather than women, Ed. And so young women do seem to be sticking with the Democrats. And a lot of that's got to do with the abortion debate in America, because you'll recall that the Supreme Court ruling that guaranteed access to abortion was scrapped by the Trump's
Yeah, absolutely.
conservative
Roe
court.
versus Wade. Yeah.
So exactly. And so, but young men are much more attracted to Trump's bombastic style. There's a lot of course, Trump memes on social media that catch the eye, whereas the Biden memes on social media are all of him falling up the stairs and not knowing which way to leave the stage and being rather doddery. And of course, when he comes on TV finally to talk about Gaza after not talking to the nation about it for weeks and weeks, he's basically grandpa telling the kids to cut it out and to behave themselves. And so he just doesn't know how to speak to young people. And
That's interesting. What about the
yeah,
polls in general? Because I gather that an Ipsos poll, a 538 poll, a YouGov poll, they all show a margin of 1%, which is within the margin of error. So it's basically neck and neck between Trump and Biden across the whole US electorate.
it's absolutely neck and neck. The Real Clear Politics average, which looks at all the polls and recent and weighs them for recent ones, one has Trump up 1.2%. And I just had a look through the swing states where the election's going to be won and lost in about 6
I was
states.
literally you read my mind. I was about to ask you that question because I keep reading it, probably in your articles, that it's
Yeah, yeah.
basically down to 6 states, isn't it?
So I'll just go through them very quickly. Trump is up in all of them. The closest one is Pennsylvania, which is also the biggest. He's 1% up. The next biggest one is Michigan. He's up 1.2%. So the 2 biggest ones are the 2 closest. So we've got to keep that in mind, because Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, where Trump is up 1.8%, that's the blue wall in America. That's where, if Biden holds those states, he stays president, because they're the biggest swing states. And then the other ones that flipped for Biden last time: Georgia, Trump is up 3.8, and Arizona, Trump is up 5. So,
Oh, wow.
but the thing is, Biden can afford to lose Georgia and Arizona. If he holds the blue wall of those Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, he will remain in
And
the Oval Office.
you started another debate, David Charter. Is it Michigan or Michigan?
Oh gosh, it is actually Michigan. In
Oh,
my British way, I've been saying Michigan because I was there yesterday. I just got back
I
from
like
Detroit.
Michigan. Did you say how pleased you were to be in Michigan, and they all looked at you rather strangely?
They're looking at me strangely anyway because of my accent. They're trying to work out where I was from and what a guy from the Times was doing in a suburb of Detroit. I actually do. When I go to cities like Detroit, I like to go to a supermarket just to speak to shoppers and see how the regular voter. This is a good place to bump into regular voters, Ed.
And they're all in the coffee shops now saying, I met an English guy yesterday who came and said we were in a swing state. And they were
Exactly.
contemplating what on earth you were
Called
talking
Michigan,
about,
which
David
they'd never
Charter.
heard of. Yeah.
David
So
Charter.
it is Michigan. I can confirm.
David Charter, the assistant US editor at the Times. Thank you for coming on the show and take us through, as usual, the road to 46 or the road to 47, depending on your penchant.